Good morning, students. Today we will discuss about economic reforms. The term economic reforms means necessarily structural adjustments to external events. It includes functions of countries' spending to the level which is parallel to its income and thereby reducing fiscal deficit. Why there was need for the reforms, for economic reforms? Because there were some factors which were responsible for this economic reforms, which were: number one, increase in fiscal deficit. Next one is increase in adverse BOP, that is balance of payment. Gulf crisis was also the main reason behind this economic reform, and fall in foreign exchange reserve, rise in prices of essential commodities, or we can say increase in the general price level. And the major responsible factor for this economic reform was poor performance of public sector. Public sector was unable to fulfill the requirements of the people. The main features of economic reforms were, it is also known as LPG policy. The main feature of this policy were privatization, globalization and liberalization. So, what liberalization is? Liberalization means to giving the liberty to the people, especially to the private sector. It means to free the company or the private sector from direct or physical control which was earlier imposed by the government. Prior 1991, government had imposed several types of controls on the Indian economy, like industrial licensing system, price control, financial control on goods and services, goods and import licenses. Import license was mandatory. Foreign exchange control, restrictions on investment by big business houses, etc. These were the controls which was imposed by the Indian government prior to 1991. And there was a need to liberalize these reforms, and economic reforms were based on the assumption that market forces could guide the economy in a more effective manner than government control. Measures that were taken for the liberalizations were abolition of industrial licensing and registration, concessions from MRTP Act, freedom from expansion and production to industries, increase in the investment limit of the small scale industries, which was earlier 25 lakhs and it is raised to 1 crore. Measures taken for liberalizations were freedom to import capital goods, freedom to import technology, an action plan for information technology and software development. Now we'll see privatization. Privatization means converting the government enterprises into the private sector or selling some part of government enterprises to private companies. It means allowing the private sector to set up more and more of industries that were previously reserved for public sector. It can be in the three forms. Number one, change in ownership through liquidation, etc. Organizational measures and through operational measures. What were the objectives behind privatization? The main objectives were to increase efficiency and competitive powers to the enterprises, to strengthen industrial management, to learn more and more foreign currency, to make optimum use of resources, and to achieve rapid industrial development of the country. There were some advantages of this privatization, like reduction in economic burden, increase in efficiency, reduction in sense of irresponsibility, scientific management, reduction in political interference, and encouragement of new inventions. As every coin has two faces, there were some disadvantages also, and these disadvantages were lack of social welfare, because as we convert our resources from government sector to private sector is motivated by the profit maximization. So there was a lack of social welfare, class struggle, increase in equality as the gap between rich and poor were increasing, and increase in unemployment, and exploitation of weaker section. The main measures adopted for privatizations were contraction of public sector, disinvestment, sale of shares of public enterprises, increase in private sector, conversion of loans into shares is not necessary now, and sick industries were closed. Public sector reforms and disinvestment programs. Public sector in India includes all activities or institutions funded out of the government's budget, whether at center or state. Public sector includes the following: government department and government companies, irrigation and power objects, railways, post and telegraphs, banking, insurance, financial and other services. Now, the sector growing against the public sector were the conflicts between financial and social objectives, problem of losses of low rate of return on investment, lack of professionalism in management, time and cost overruns in new projects, underutilization of capacity, and operational inefficiency. Public sector reforms were PSU refocusing, Memorandum of Understanding, financial and operational autonomy, restricting of sick units, privatization through disinvestment, protection of PSU workers' interest. Now we will see disinvestment. What disinvestment is? It's a program towards greater privatization of the economy, which was launched in the year 1991-92. And there were some major issues related to disinvestment. They were valuation of public sector unit, methods of disinvestment, the extent of disinvestment, and the issues concerning labor. Now students will see what is globalization. Globalization means connecting the one country's economy with the world's economy. It is defined as a process associated with increasing openness, growing economic independence, and deepening economic integration in the world economy. Or we can say globalization means opening the door of one country for the rest of the world. Globalization includes reduction of trade barriers, free flow of capital, free flow of technology, and free movement of technology from one country to another. Now, how globalization takes place? There are some stages. In stage 1, domestic company export to foreign countries through the dealers or distributors of home country. Stage 2, the domestic company exports to foreign countries directly on its own. Stage 3, the domestic company becomes an international company by establishing production and marketing operations in various key foreign countries. Stage 4, the company replicates a foreign company in the foreign country by having all the facilities including research and development, full-fledged human resources, etc. And the stage 5, the company becomes a true foreign company by serving the needs of foreign customers just like the host country's company serves. When we classify the globalization, we can see globalization can be of markets, globalization of production, globalization of technology, and globalization of investment. Various measures taken for globalization were reduction of import duties, reducing custom duty, encouragement of foreign investment. As we can say, globalization is directly responsible for increasing the supply of foreign currency in a country and devaluation of currency. These were the measures which were specially taken for globalization by the Indian government. So, So students, new economic policy as we know, this is an economic reform which is a set of economic policies directed to accelerate the pace of growth and development of a country. Once again, we'll recall why there was a need for new economic policy. As we know, there was a high degree of fiscal deficit. The BOP was in crisis and the balance of BOP was negative. Foreign exchange reserves were sharply declined to 6 to 52 crores in 1989 and 90. There was an inflationary spiral where the prices of essential commodities were rapidly increasing and the public sector undertakings were also not doing or performing well. So there was a need to adopt a new economic policy, and the Indian government were under the pressure to adopt this policy by adopting three major elements, by allowing the the policies of the WTO, and they were forced to adopt the three elements of this NEP were liberalization, privatization and globalization. Under this liberalization, various reforms were taken, like industrial sector reforms, financial sector reforms, fiscal reforms, external sector reforms, etc. Thank you very much.